This podcast contains swear words.
Well, hi. Welcome to Talking Shit with Tara Cheyenne, a podcast about art making, creativity, which can mean so many things. I mean, think about all the creative things you do in a day. Figuring out what are you going to make for dinner or lunch, or that's weird shit you have in your fridge, but somehow you put it together and it was actually pretty good. Making up that schedule, making up that excuse for the thing that you don't want to go to so you don't have to go. Although I'm coming from the perspective of a performing artist, the issues and topics and the great ideas on this podcast and in these interviews, I think they're relevant for all of us, whether you consider yourself an artist or not. Life is a creative act. And I am your host, Tara Cheyenne Friedenberg. What do? Well, I make shit up for a living is really what I do. I choreograph, I perform talking and dancing. I'm an educator, and I am the artistic director of Tara Cheyenne Performance. Creative name. And I live gratefully on these unceded territories, the stolen lands of the Musqueam, Tsleil-Waututh, and Squamish nations on the west coast of Turtle Island. Alrighty, before we jump into today's interview with somebody, this is very special. All my guests are very special. I get excited about sharing all of these interviews with you. I would like to remind you to rate, review, 5 stars, hearts, share with your friend. It really does make a difference to the old algorithm, so how easy it is for folks to find us. And just recommending it, that's also, I love analog, talking or phoning somebody. And if you have the means, donations are always welcome. The small, the big, the everything in between. And you can get the link to donate in the show notes or go to our website, www.taracheyenne.com, upper right-hand corner. It says donate. Click there. Easy peasy. Okay, let's get ready for today's interview with my friend, Amanda Sum, she, her. Amanda is a performer and a creator who dances between theater and music. Don't I love how she wrote that in her bio? That is awesome. Amanda has collaborated on many interdisciplinary theater-based works, which have brought her to perform and present works at the Smush Gallery, Jersey City, On the Board, Seattle, Fur Factory Festival of Ensemble and Devised Theater in San Francisco, and Summerworks, Toronto. And as an actor, Amanda's recent credits include 4 seasons of the East Van Panto. So incredible, so delightful. Sense and Sensibility. Oh, I did the choreography for that at the Arts Club. Amanda's debut indie pop album, New Age Attitudes, was released in the fall of 2020. And there's a whole bunch more in her bio in the show notes. All right, Amanda.
Yes.
Here we are.
Here we are.
Welcome to Talking Shit with Tara Cheyenne. Oh, yeah, swearing is 100% allowed.
Great.
We enjoy swearing. I enjoy swearing. So I have known you in a few capacities for a few years and am a huge fan. And I'm always really excited when you're on the cast list and I get to choreograph. I want more of those because we had such a good time.
We did.
Last year.
It was a year ago today now. I've been thinking about it when we closed.
You're right.
Yeah.
You're right.
Or yesterday.
Wow.
Or whenever.
Oh
About a year ago.
Oh my God. The Jane Austen play.
Yes.
Yes.
With the rolling chairs.
And everybody in white.
Yes.
White. There was this scene. I was like, this is just the beginning of the choreography. There's this scene for the listeners. There's this storm scene. And Amanda's character is like running through the moors. And it was so beautiful. You're such a great mover.
Thank you.
That I was just like, oh, come on. I just want to choreograph like another 2 minutes, please.
Oh, dream. This is our next thing. Just a whole piece based on that storm scene.
This grant writes itself.
Okay. Yes.
It's called Storms or Bad Weather or something like that. And it's all just scenes.
Yes.
Oh,
Okay.
all right.
We're on to something.
We're on to something. All right. So, Amanda, a lot of our listeners are dance folks, but more and more theater folks are listening. So, I mean, I think of you as a real interdisciplinary artist. You're a musician and songwriter and an actor, playwright, mover. I don't know. I'm just calling
I
you.
don't
I'm just
know.
like saying that because I'm
Yeah.
like, I would like to see the play that you write.
Yes. Yep. Well, I did write a theater show, but it's not quite a play. It's kind of like the album that I wrote. I turned it into a theater show, which we're actually touring later this month. But
What's it called?
it's called New Age Attitudes Live in Concert.
Yeah.
And it's kind of a concert, but it's kind of just silent reading.
Ooh.
Yeah, so that I mean, I wouldn't call myself a playwright, but I've written theater show, a theater adjacent show. But yeah, I love kind of bouncing between all these different disciplines and feel like I have a little finger in many different pockets, which keeps it exciting.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, I would even say, because my dear friend and collaborator, Joanna Garfinkel,
hmm
she calls my shows plays.
hmm
And I'm like, oh, she's like, well, there's text and there's dancing and there's character and there's through line and there's narrative. So why are you pushing back? And she has a good point. I'm just saying that because just like it kind of exploding the idea of what is playwriting and what is theater. I like to, dismantle it all really.
hmm Yeah, it all feeds into each other. I think even in the titling of the show that I wrote, New Age Attitudes is the title of my album, and it's live in concert, which to me in the show, I kind of get into definitions of what concert is. And I say, noun, a musical showing in public, or two, concert means in agreement. So the play on live in concert to me is where we're in agreement that we can call this a concert, but really you're just sitting here reading the book that I wrote for you. And we can call it what it is, but here we are together in agreement. And even like titling things can confuse what it is, and people have shown up to my weird book show thinking, oh, it's Amanda Sum in concert. We're just going to see her play her album through. And it's totally not that. And I kind of love the confusion because why not throw the expectation out?
Right?
Yeah.
Then we're open to something completely different. And sometimes there's something so powerful about when we have one expectation and we get woo,
Yeah.
this other door opens.
Yeah. Yeah. But I have struggled a bit with that too, because then when I do actually just play concert, I don't know how to promote it in a way of saying, okay, like I'm actually going to play for you or or otherwise. And I think me naming my music project just my name was a whole thing in itself, because I didn't know if I wanted it to be separate from my kind of theater persona or theater career. But I landed on just releasing under my name because it felt like these songs were personal. And I when people would see, oh, it's Amanda Sum, I would want them to know it's me and not, whatever moniker I could have chosen. And yeah.
There's something kind of beautiful about that, as you were saying, this integration of all the ways we are and all our art forms. And so much of kind of the, I guess, colonial history of, theater and dance and music have been very siloed. So, kind of celebrating all the places where the intersections between our crafts or within our crafts is pretty beautiful.
Yeah. Yeah. It's really lovely to see where the separations are and where the blendings are. I think with the whole name thing, I still sit with being like, oh, maybe I should have really tried to separate that, because then I go to these music things and people are like, oh, she's a theater girl or she's an actor, or otherwise, where if I'm on a theater show and they're like, well, she wants to be a musician. And I'm like, but we can be both. But I see where it sits in like when I'm in a certain thing, sometimes it is helpful to like not box myself in a negative way, but just to like focus in on that so that I can fill it to the edges of that box while I'm there.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah, like kind of like digging in these like specific places when it really serves the project or yourself as an artist, but also being open to all those overlaps. I imagine, well, it is for me, and I imagine for you too, it's like adventure through various landscapes, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's going to be a constant balance of that, of there's always kind of a grass is greener bit to it, where right now I'm so heavily on a music project and I'm like, oh, I do miss acting a little. And then when I'm in an acting thing, I'm like, oh, I just want to be making my own weird thing. And yeah, like having the ability to split my brain in multiple pieces is the practice for sure.
Right?
Yeah.
Can you, like, as deep or as shallow as you feel like going? I'm interested in like your trajectory if you look back and like when you started acting and when you started playing music or exploring music, like what was the development of Amanda here today?
Yes. Well, I was put into piano lessons, classical piano, which I did not like.
No.
Because I was bad at it. And I think that's something that I'm still, as young adult Amanda, I'm like, I gotta have an awareness of that when I kind of discount things because I'm bad at it. And I mean, that's just what happened with me in piano. But I stuck with it for a while, and then I grew up tap dancing, and I love tap as a form because it's both a form of music and a form of movement. And I think that really had shaped even my writing of music today now, because in that there's like a lens of tap dance that's very showy in a theater world. If I'm like, oh yeah, I grew up tap dancing, people are like, ooh, jazz hands, like time step, and I'm like, okay, sure, but also the form that I was in on, yes, had a bit of like the competition tap dance part of it, but that's where I learned how to jam with live musicians, how to call a form. That was my like introduction to jazz, really, was through tap and rhythm, and how to like form rhythm and hear rhythm and like scat it and then be able to translate it into your body. And so I grew up doing that all through high school, all through elementary and high school. And within high school, I was in band and choir. And in grade 10, I taught myself guitar. I quit piano, taught myself guitar because I wanted to impress my crush. And thought I would like do the whole singer-songwriter, like play guitar in a floral dress kind of girl. And I think I wrote one song then and it was not good, but I would post covers to YouTube. And then my band class always overlapped with the drama class. So I always chose band growing up in high school. And I played oboe and English horn. And then somehow my mom was really involved in community theater. She sat on boards for different companies, and my sister was in drama. And so I went to a lot of shows, but I wasn't in drama in high school. But in my grade 11 and 12, the schedule lined up so that I did do the drama program in theater, and I really quite liked it. And somehow at the end of grade 12, I was like, I guess I'm doing this now. And then I went to SFU for theater performance, which, as you know, is quite a interdisciplinary program and quite experimental. And that was kind of where I was sitting with. Like, I didn't necessarily want to be an actor. which I remember quite clearly. That's what they told us when we got in, is like,
Oh, interesting.
you're going to graduate, where the intention isn't for you to graduate and then audition and try to work for other people. The intention is that you're here, we give you the tools, and you make your own work. And I was like, yeah, that's sick.
Right?
That's what I want.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I went into SFU and still was like hobby guitar playing and hadn't played piano for years. And then somehow in the midst of being in SFU and some of the MFA projects that I was a part of and some of the different shows, I would be brought on for some kind of music piece, either to compose something or to sing something. And that's when I was like, oh, right, this is like where they're kind of flowing back. And then around 2018, I started writing songs, went back to the piano. And because I had a long break, I think I found joy in it again. And it wasn't for practice, it was just for me. And I stopped tap dancing once I entered SFU. And so I kind of went back to tap as well at that point. And then that's when things like started really just bleeding into each other, where I found myself like writing songs starting from rhythm, and I'd like scat a rhythm and be like, okay, how can I fit a melody into that rhythmic sense? And then further, how do I put lyrics to that in really interesting ways that I hadn't really come to before? And then I had this like, oh, right, I have this 5 years of theater training, or 4.5. And while I was in SFU, I was taking some dance courses and some music courses. And I knew that once I got out of there, the work that I did want to make was some kind of melding of theater and music without it being musical theater.
Right.
Yeah, so I thought, all this time and money into my theater training, I do want to see what it's like to hone in on my music making in the effort for them then to come together. So that's when I started writing my first music grants, and yeah, and then I graduated, the pandemic hit, and I was also working in theater through school. So I kind of had beautiful connections and community that grew out of that. And yeah, I think honestly, the pandemic was really helpful for my artistic growth. And I feel really lucky of how the timeline all went. And yeah, now as I've made music and then started getting into music video making and film, in that, there's like my dance background has like come back in more in ways that I thought it would. And it's nice to kind of feel that push pull of what's at the forefront and what then takes a back seat. So yeah, that's kind of where it all stemmed from.
Wow. That's a good story. That's a good story. Your lived experience. It's so interesting, like tracing the lines through embodied practice. Can you tell I'm doing my MFA right now?
Yes. Yes.
We're going to talk about embodied practice and use words that I don't really know what their meaning is, but I'm going to use them anyway.
We love to do it.
Right? Talk the talk. I'm just like really drawn to that, tap dance. I did tap as a kid. There's so much joy. There's this potency of like the rhythm in your bones, in your body, and the vibration. And since we're mostly water, especially when we're young, I think about like all that. And then I think about like music being about vibration. So those two things coming together, I just like, oh, that's so neat.
Yeah.
Neat's not the right word, but you know what I mean.
I know what you mean. Yeah, there was a time in 2019 as well when I was starting to, I think I had just gotten my first grant. I had written some songs and I was learning how to arrange because I write just vocals and piano or vocals and guitar. And I was like, how do I write like a bass part and write a drum part and fill it out? And I was thinking, okay, when I write this drum part, I want to be able to articulate it to the drummer that I'm going to hire and work with. And so I went into drum lessons just so that I could have a sense of how would I chart this? How would I just want a base level knowledge so that I'm able to communicate to a player after. And so I was taking these drum lessons, and there are so many. It's like, it's the same. It's tap dance,
Right.
but using your hands as well.
Right.
Like same, even definitions of what something is called, and like rhythmically, obviously, like it's the language of music. So there was a base level of, okay, I can understand that. And it's just like how to chart it or drummers to understand it.
Mm-hmm.
But so much crossover. And that was like amazing, because sometimes then when I'm writing something and I'm trying to hear what a drum part would be, I like think about what I would do as a groove as a dancer. And then I'm like, okay, if it's like I hear this certain groove in a tap dance form, how do I then put that as a drum kit sound? And yeah, it's kind of amazing that there's so many crossovers, and that's just like one example of how everything's intertwined, which is really beautiful, actually.
It's so beautiful. And it feels like to me, when I teach and stuff, and when I choreograph and work with folks, I think sometimes like it's probably how we're all educated, like this idea. And you said something earlier about being bad at things.
Mm-hmm.
And there's like, I think sometimes we're afraid to try things with like, well, I'm bad at that, and I don't really know how to do that. So until I'm an expert, I can't even touch it. That makes me a little bit verklempt about that, because when we feel like, oh, there's little doorways, there's little fairy doors
Mm-hmm.
everywhere where you can go through, and you're not going to be an expert, but there's going to be places where you connect.
Yeah.
And so finding those, and then they open up this whole world, and you discover, percussion in your feet, percussion on a drum set, etc. And like you say, like this vocabulary opens up,
Mm-hmm.
and probably all kinds of possibilities too. The other thing that I wanted to touch on too is when you don't know, sometimes you can imagine things or do things in ways that if you were an expert, you wouldn't do.
Yeah.
So there's a level of invention, right?
Exactly. There's also like a big comedy piece about being bad at something that I'm like, oh, I tried.
Totally.
And I love to move forward with like being bad at something. And yeah, I think I really can clock myself downplaying a lot in everything that I do, where I'm like, oh, I can play guitar, but I'm not a guitarist. Or I've made a couple of films, but I'm not a filmmaker. And because I feel this kind of not non-commitment, but this feeling of, oh, I'm not ever going to be that, just that. So I will kind of claim myself as this, not hobbyist, but like a little more than hobbyist, but not professional in any sense, in any one thing. So that I can be like, if I do something, if I make a film and it's really bad, then I can be like, yeah, but I'm not a filmmaker. So it can be bad. I tried.
It's kind of like it keeps the crackle and the joy in a way.
Yeah. I think you have to keep the joy somewhere, because what are we doing if we're not?
Right?
Yeah.
Exactly. If it's not, I think there's this little equation that somebody told me years and years ago. For every gig or project, you need to have one or more of the following. You do it for fun,
Mm-hmm.
money,
Mm-hmm.
or prestige /
Mm-hmm.
connections.
Mm-hmm.
And if you can have more than one, you're rocking. If you can have all three, obviously it's perfect.
Mm-hmm.
But so many times I think, I don't know, like we forget the possibility of the joy.
Yeah. And recently I was at SFU. Jamie Long had me in with a couple others, and Erica Mitsuhashi was saying her best piece of advice was to celebrate, and to celebrate others, and to celebrate yourself. And that was like, oh, right. I sometimes forget that, like to acknowledge the things that, oh, this is a big thing. And I did that. Or if you didn't get a grant, celebrate it still. I didn't get it.
Definitely.
Or if your friend got it and you didn't, celebrate them. Like, I think it's easy to forget the joy and the celebration that there's constantly things to celebrate within this wild, wild world of making your own work. And yeah, I can clock that. It's easy to forget.
Yeah, that's one of those things. And we'll have a podcast with Erica. We're going to release that really soon. So,
Oh, amazing.
listeners, if you haven't listened to that one, listen to that one. She's just lovely and has so many really beautiful things to say about being an artist. But I tell people sometimes go back and like catalog all the stuff you've done, even the stuff that you think is like, oh, well, that was easy for me, or that's no big deal, or that was, just this little project I did. But if you just like catalog it all so you can celebrate it, so you can like look at it and go like, oh, wow, actually, I am accomplished. Or maybe, Amanda, maybe you are a professional in some of these things that, as my dear friend JD says, have the audacity of a mediocre white man.
Yes.
Yes, I'm a professional guitarist.
Yes, that I do. I think about that sometimes. I'm like, I think I should have more confidence of, yeah, mediocre white man this, and just be like, yeah, I can do that.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, no problem.
Yeah, no problem. I got it. I've probably told this story on this podcast before, but hey, I'm middle-aged, so get ready for me to repeat myself constantly. One of my first gigs out of SFU, like fresh, I auditioned for this Theater for Young People show, and the director said, "Can you juggle?" And I said, "Yes." So that was the phone conversation. The audition was on Monday. On Friday, I said, "Yes, I can juggle." I could not juggle. So I had 2 days to figure it out, and I did. So I just like those little moments, like, what if you just said, yeah,
no problem.
No problem. I can figure that out. Of course.
Yeah.
Of course you could figure it out.
Yes, that's how we've gotta be sometimes.
Yeah. But I also just want to acknowledge that like feeling amateur, which actually means to love, to be in love with a form, to be an amateur in it, which I think is really important to remember. The love for it, the celebration of it.
Yeah.
And feel like I don't really know what I'm doing. There's kind of a delightful freedom in that, and a potential that also cannot be downplayed.
Yes. I think I'm constantly swimming in the I don't know what I'm doing. And sometimes it feels like I'm a little lost. But then you find those moments where you land and it's like, I do know. I got this. But the joy of that came from, oh yeah, I was swimming before. I did not know. and then like finding that grounding piece feels then ever so much more joyous.
Yeah. Hey.
Yeah.
Oh, I also heard you talk about, I think this is also a really great notion, idea, framework, is like making for yourself. And I've heard, people like Rick Rubin and David Bowie and all kinds of like fancy artists, old artists.
Older.
Yeah, older. Thank you. That concept, do you like it? Is it giving you joy? And that cannot be underestimated, the potential of that.
Yeah. More so, I've been thinking about this in the songwriting realm because lately I've been writing more journalistically, I'd say. Like with the first album, there are a couple more journalistic personal ones, but they're kind of more like broader, maybe identity pieces, maybe a bit more general poetic in that kind of realm. But the next little collection that's going to come out are quite like personal to me and like really paint a me experience. And then I think I get in my head of like, no one's gonna care. And this is what I experienced. And the thought of someone even relating to it is kind of a big concept to me because I'm like, oh, you have that exact thing too? No way. This is mine. Yeah, it's a tricky thing because I'm like, I am writing this for myself, but then the idea of it being interpreted otherwise is kind of scary and is kind of like, oh, are people gonna judge me? And they're like, oh, Amanda did that. And so when I'm actually writing a song, say, I'm not thinking about someone else hearing it.
Right.
I am writing it for me.
Yeah.
And yeah, the act of sharing is a whole thing that still feels wild to me. And kind of is what the show that I wrote kind of came from.
So vulnerable, hey? Like there's a real,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. But then again, when I'm listening to some music and I hear someone say something that feels really hyper specific, I'm like, whoa, the fact that you detailed it in that way, yes, what I have felt isn't necessarily the exact same thing, of course, but because it's so hyper specific, I can somehow place myself in it better than I can in something more general. And yeah, I just find it interesting of different ways of writing to let people in or let yourself express, and noting what you want to hide and what you want to present is like a little teeter-totter.
Absolutely, hey.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it's like this fine line sometimes. Sometimes it's not such a fine line. But I find that the more, and this is when I witness work and when I make work, because my work's been getting more and more personal over the last decade, I guess,
Hmm.
that the more personal, the more kind of micro, the more connections I'm finding people make with the
Hmm.
work. And the more when I see something, like you say, that has that like super specific detail that is about their lived experience, it does like, oh, I can't believe I'm going to say the little fairy doors. What is with me? That's the metaphor that's happening today.
That's today.
Sorry, everybody. Um, like I just spent the weekend on Salt Spring Island. But it's that vulnerability. It's that like opening up, and then you can kind of like you can see your own reflection, even though it's different. It's in a different surface. But
Hmm.
I don't know. I think it does bring us together when we open up like that.
Yeah, which is a scary thing to me to know that then I'm being seen in that way. But then I kind of have this thought of, oh, actually, maybe they don't see me at all. Maybe when they listen to it, they are just seeing themselves in it
Right.
or finding the moments where they feel that they connect to it, and they're not, it's not about me. And they're not thinking, wow, Amanda did that. They're thinking, oh wow, that one time that I felt that those similar feelings, that like really resonates with me. And yeah, that kind of switch of, oh, now it's become more than my personal story, and now it's their little vessel for them to feel seen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm sure you've had this too, like either watching a show or I get this sometimes from comedy specials from comedians that I really like super adore. And they say, and I'm like, oh my God, oh my God, yes. How did you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, it's kind of the purpose of art in a way,
Yeah.
one of the big purposes, I think, anyway.
Yeah, I feel the same way when I'm watching some comedy specials or things where I'm like, ah, yeah, I feel seen. And it's nice to know that someone else has had that too, and now we can laugh about it.
Right?
Yeah.
Totally. I have a lot of questions. We're not going to get to them all. As a interdisciplinary artist,
Hmm.
if you were to cast yourself forward in time, what do you think the future is? Because we've already kind of dipped into this a little bit about, different quote unquote disciplines. The future of performance, I guess, to put an umbrella over dance, theater, music, etc.
What do I think the future is
Yeah, what's the future, Amanda? Tell me.
in general or for myself?
Either.
Oh, um, wow. Well, it's funny because I think quite ahead.
Do you?
Yeah. And then I kind of get a little lost, I'd say. And I do have these spurts of, oh, is this going to be sustainable for me?
Mm.
Is this like, I barely made my March rent this year, or and I'm like, I'm fine because I've banked accordingly. But I'm like, whoa, is this what it is? Is this, am I going to, like, how do I am I strong enough to upkeep this kind of lifestyle?
Hmm.
And I'm not sure, to be honest. And yesterday, I was making 30 pop-up books for the show, and I was on my email, and some of these things came in, and I was like, whoa, is this what it is to feel a bit of a burnout? Is it?
Mm.
Which I hadn't really, I don't know. I think I weave in and out. So for me, I don't know what the future is, but I have definite dreams of the things that I want to make.
Mm.
And then in general future of performance, my goodness, I I am excited by a lot of the things that I'm seeing, and I love being able to see things that I don't like as well.
Yeah.
And I don't know, I feel a bit stumped on this question of the future. I think I need to like see things outside of home and work with people not from here too, just to like feel what the differences are in placements.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't think I have a great answer for that.
It's all a great answer because it might be a question too that I think maybe I have on my mind as an older person, middle-aged person, because just from experience, just from time, there's maybe a
Hmm.
little bit more of like, I can kind of see what's happening. I can see the shifts.
Hmm.
But when you're deep in it and also like really validating that place of like, is this sustainable?
Yeah.
What the hell? And I just want to really acknowledge that it is really hard
Yeah.
to be an artist, even when on the outside, sometimes things look like they're going like screamingly well, but it's still this like precarity
Hmm.
that we have to deal with. And it's real. And the self-care and also the caring for each other that needs to go on, I think is kind of urgent and super important because one of my soapboxes, and I'm sure you've heard me go on about, but is keeping especially female identifying queer and non-binary folks, like keeping us in the craft.
Hmm.
Because I think the burnout for those folks is higher. And then we lose these voices
Yeah.
because it's too hard, especially when people are caregiving, but not always. That's not always the reason. I don't know. I mean, I'm going to be a little bit of a mummy for a minute, but just like when you think, is this burnout? I feel like that's a bit of a canary in the coal mine. It's like, oh, maybe some more space,
Hmm.
maybe, I don't know, like what are the things we can do?
Yeah, it is a toughie. And I mean, I talk with people who are younger than me. I talk with people who are a decade older than me or 2 decades older than me, and it's like it's the same. It's the same thing. And I think that is when I really like clicked in. Like, I think I've been very privileged of being able to make this work for me for the last handful of years. And so now that I'm feeling this, like, ooh, now this granting structure has really changed. The whole kind of environment of how to make a living has kind of changed. I'm talking to people who are a little older than me and they're feeling the same things. I go, oh, right, this is just what it is. Like, I'm not gonna mature out of this. I'm not gonna make like let's make it big. Even I don't know, like
Mm,
yeah, and then thinking about that in the sense of the different disciplines, like what it is to be a successful theater maker, what it is to be a successful, all in quotations, successful, I'd say,
mhm,
actor, a successful musician. And I think like each area is so different and of course share a lot of similarities. But if I am bouncing between these three, how am I ever gonna sustain myself if I can't go full in and support myself financially, even though I'm artistically fulfilled? Yeah, that's a big question.
mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, I wish I could tell you it gets easier.
Yeah.
I mean, it's different.
Hmm.
There are differences.
Hmm.
I wonder about where we are right now and this kind of like shift that's happening and what artists are expected to carry,
Hmm.
far beyond the art making and what it is to be an interdisciplinary artist. I mean, there's all the this word interdisciplinary, like in the university and the
Mhm.
funding bodies gets thrown around like people know what it means. But still, there's this, yeah, but what do you really do? I mean, I'm not going to name the funding body, but it does, like, oh, you're, interdisciplinary. But then the next question is, but what is your primary discipline?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? There's still like,
Yeah.
you're still required to declare a major.
But yeah. It's so hard. Yeah. I mean, I came across that when it's Canada Council, but
Let's name them. Come on.
let's just name it.
Yeah.
When I was making my, what's it called? Artist profile.
Oh, yeah.
The first thing that I applied with them was music. So I did emerging music. And then the next thing I applied for was a research development grant for this theater show that I was making. That was my album in a theater version. So I was like, I'm going to make a new artist profile for theater. Also, still emerging, I'd say. And then I tried to do it. And then they were like, you can't have two emerging profiles. If you're switching profiles, that means you're a professional in, like, if you want to do an emerging theater, the next thing that you have, you'd be professional music. I don't know.
What?
Can I not be both? Anyway, the act of constantly trying to define yourself within this kind of thing of interdisciplinary making is like very frustrating sometimes because you are forced to label yourself.
Yeah.
And then that kind of becomes a bit annoying, I'd say. Then it becomes that thing of, oh, I'm here at this music boot camp and they're like, it's theater girl.
Right?
Or other way around. And yeah, it's a funny one.
I like that you use the word annoying because it's annoying. You're kind of like chugging along and it's like, are you kidding me? Really?
Yeah.
But yeah. It's like, is it dance? Is it theater? Is it comedy? Yes. Can we just say yes?
Yes.
Whatever vibe. Come on, man. Just for listeners who are maybe like just starting to write grants, or for those of us who are so fucking tired of the grant writing, but still feel privileged that I can do it. So, complain, not complain.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I think it's important to acknowledge that it's hard and it's complicated and it's always, there's this, changing landscape that we're navigating. I think it's important to, like, as artists, like whether we're emerging, I don't know, aren't we always emerging?
Aren't we always? That's what I think as well.
Me too. I remember way back in the day when I was told I can't apply as emerging anymore. I was like, what? Oh no. It was like emerging, mid-career, established were the three. I don't know if that's still the case. I stopped looking at that part. But to think about kind of day to day, and maybe this goes back to the celebration thing that Erica was talking about. What are the ways we can like keep each other all in the game to, support each other and be, I think, more transparency about like how these grants, how we're writing them, because we're not getting the feedback from the granting bodies because they don't have capacity. Yeah. Because there needs to be more investment in the arts. Just saying, government.
Yeah, just putting that out there. Who's listening to
just in case
to this podcast?
Yeah.
I know that they are.
They for sure are. It's like, I have a meeting in the House of Commons, but I have to finish this Tara Cheyenne podcast. I'm listening to the Amanda Sum episode. It's so good. I cannot put it down.
We know it. We know you're there, right?
Come over to the good side. Yeah. The future. I just have a couple more questions. Is there something that happens when you're just at the beginning of a project or just at the beginning of like an idea? Is there something you're noticing happening as you dig deeper into your career as a creator?
Yeah, I get quite obsessive, I think. And oftentimes I can note this from two things that have come from watching something, or I'm hearing something, or I'm watching something on TV, and then my mind has an idea of a show that I want to make or a song that I want to try writing. And then I'm watching something and my mind is not there. And I'm just thinking about that. And then I get obsessive. That's what I'm noticing, is that I get a little hyper-focused for a while. And now this show that I'm wanting to make, like the stem of that idea happened now a year and a couple months ago. And now I'm starting to move forward with it. And so now I'm like floundering, being like, how am I gonna write this? But
Oh, yeah.
I think my pattern on those making things are like a really like saturated idea, dive in, jot a few things down, wait a year, and then
Mhm.
and then try to like grab little pieces of where that came from. That's what I'm noticing. Yeah.
Neat. Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like there's a lot of power in noticing what our patterns are and noticing when they
Mm-hmm.
shift and they kind of evolve. And
Mm-hmm.
because I'm in grad school right now, and there's little like do things you've never done before, which is hard when you're as old as I am. But it's like noticing what you do and those habits and kind of honoring them and holding them
Mm-hmm.
and noticing the little shifts. I think there's a lot of power too in like the idea, the obsession. I can totally relate to this.
Mm-hmm.
And then you kind of like put it in your back brain where there's still stuff going on all the time.
Yeah.
We don't,
Yeah.
maybe not conscious of it, but it's happening.
It's happening. And I think I'm always thinking about some kind of project or work and trying to balance the backlog of that.
Mhm.
And also, for instance, touring the show that I started writing in 2020. We premiered it last year in 2023. Now we're touring it. I'm like, I feel like I've moved on, no?
Right?
I'm like, huh? But and then I haven't revisited it. Wow, that's hard to say. Revisited it in a year, and
There's your vocal warm up.
yeah, there it is. And playing with boredom of something is quite interesting because I'm like, oh well, I wrote that. Who was I then?
Right? That's so funny because I'm about to do a show, Body Parts, that I made in 2020.
Yeah,
Finally premiered it in Vancouver in May, and now I'm taking it to Surrey.
yeah,
The remount, it's like you feel where you were and then see if you can bring the piece, like get it to catch up with you.
yeah. And it's lovely that it is my own work that I can mold it in a way that feels good for the who I am right then. But then,
Yeah.
there's stuff that's you stick with it
Mhm.
to how I wrote it. And I love that. I know I can't do everything, and it's nice to have someone else's eye and brain hold me accountable to that.
Mhm.
Yeah, so Maiko directed it, and that feels like, okay, right. Because if I were to direct this would be a shit show. This would, mm-mm.
It's so important, right?
Yeah,
It's so important to have our team,
yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
go on a lot about, sure, I'm the only one up there, but it's still an ensemble piece.
yeah,
There's all these people who are helping me, helping the work.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. The people it's the best part of this whole thing.
it is the best part, isn't it?
Yeah,
Yeah. I feel really lucky and yeah, I marvel at our community here on the West Coast and beyond too. Just like,
hmm,
we keep doing it, we keep showing up, and it's quite a loving community, I feel.
yeah. I think so too.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I'm glad that's your experience.
yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, there's always
I know.
little,
And you know who you are.
and you are
They probably are not
not listening.
for sure not listening.
They're
I
like,
know.
Amanda on Tara.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna listen.
No way. Not those two. Are you kidding? Is there anything you can tell us about the next project you have going on?
Yes, I recorded a suite.
Mhm.
I'm calling it an EP, but I don't know. It's like one 15-minute long song made up of 18 short movements. And it's all about my love life, which is
Mm.
really scary for me because I was very intentional of all of the music that I have out currently is not about that at all because I didn't want to be like young singer-songwriters singing about being in and out of love. I just didn't want that lens, and I wanted to be like, I'm smarter than that. I'm going to talk about identity and what it is to live in this world. Anyway, my love life is, a bit of a jungle gym, I'd say. And I wrote this suite over 3 years or 2 years, maybe. Anyway, so recorded that. That's going to come out soon enough. And then I've made a film for it. And I'm shooting one more, but each of the 18 songs is getting their own music video. There's 13 different directors, each taking on one piece of it, which is really, it became a bit more ambitious.
Wow. Wow. That sounds pretty epic.
Endeavored it to be, but I'm very excited and I love, again, like comes back to the community part of it where I get to work with such amazing people. And, there's so much of this, again, is like a personal thing where I've written these quite vulnerable little pieces, and to share it with someone else is scary, but then having them interpret it makes it feel good and makes it feel like I can distance myself from perhaps a maybe hurtful thing that happened, and for someone else to put their vision on it feels actually really wonderful. And I'm excited about that. I'm excited to have worked with people that I haven't worked before with in that capacity. And yeah, so that's going to come out as well later this year. And then just touring that show with Yukon, playing a couple little solo sets, and then the EP suite release will be in the summer, and that'll be a big band show, which I'm excited about. Yeah.
Amazing. Amazing. We'll link to all those in the show notes so folks can look out for that new release. And if they're in the vicinity of your New Age Attitudes tour,
yes,
we can catch you. Last question for this time.
Yeah.
Is there something you are doing in your life that is helping you, kind of keep your head above water, stay creative, whether it's meditation practice or binging a show on Netflix or eating a certain kind of cake, anything at all that's kind of working for you these days?
These days, I'm loving doing my stupid little kettlebell workout at home.
Yes.
And yeah, my relationship to exercise is sometimes hard. But lately I've been on my train and I'm liking it. And I'm feeling good about it. And makes me feel like, oh, a little sweat. I do feel good because sometimes it's hard getting your mentals around that. That's helping me. And just like going for walks with friends. Nice.
It is.
Or by myself.
Yeah.
I like walking outside, getting outside. Yeah. That's what's helping me right now. Staying above.
Those are really good.
What's yours?
Oh, thanks for asking. Going to the gym.
Okay.
Man, I started lifting weights like in a serious way a couple years ago. And I'm like, why didn't I start this in my 20s? I love it so much. It's like for the first time in my life, I'm trying to get bigger. Right? Like coming from the dance world, I've been trying to get smaller for, 49 years.
Yeah.
And now it's like, oh no, I want to Hulk out. It feels so good. And also just like the mental health of strength.
Yeah.
Just going to geek out a tiny bit with neuroscience.
Yeah.
When the muscles contract, they actually release a hormone that has been dubbed the hope hormone. So there's actually literal science in when the muscles pump, it does create a better mental place for us. So
maybe that's why those gym bros are so confident.
Right?
Yeah.
I know.
Honestly, though, like gym bros turn me off a bit. Actually, a lot.
I agree. They're awful. The place I go, it's mostly middle-aged folks and a lot of middle-aged femme folks. And it's fucking delightful. Amazing. Yeah.
That's the environment that you'd need to. Yeah.
Exactly. If anybody's interested, the podcast, I can't remember the number, with Caron Adderley and Kate Franklin, we talk all about, getting pumped and the intersections with art making and strength training. Very interesting.
Amazing. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I love it. Just imagining you in your kettlebells.
Don't imagine too hard.
No, it's good.
No.
Well, you know me, I imagine and then I imagine the show.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so maybe we need to put kettlebells into
Yes.
our storm scene show.
The storm scene show. There's one that's going to have kettlebells for sure.
Yeah, write that down. Yeah.
Writing it down.
Is it a big ensemble piece, we thinking?
I think part of it is going to have to be a big ensemble piece.
I think so as well. But it might be like a surprise. Like we kind of start it, everyone thinks it's a solo show, and then suddenly,
Oh, yeah.
hello, 20 people on stage.
Everybody from every direction.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay, I like it.
I like that. And then weave in some kettlebells in there. Yeah, there's for sure some lifting.
Oh, yeah.
Uh-huh.
Big lifting.
Yeah.
I see you crowd surfing a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Something like that.
That was an amazing feeling. I will say I have friends who play music and they're in bands that allow them to crowd surf.
Oh, wow.
I'm a bit jealous because none of my music would ever be able to crowd surf to this sad little singer-songwriter song. Never in a million years. So I'm glad I had that pseudo crowd surf experience. Not quite. Never left the stage in Sense and Sense, but that feeling of like just being held by your back and being lifted. Oh, it's quite freeing.
It's really wonderful, isn't it?
Yeah.
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 Well, maybe you need to write a song with the sole purpose of it being a crowd surf song.
Yeah. It's called crowd surfing.
It's just about that. Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. I love it.
Actually, that could be fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, put that into okay, yes. Yep, this is a great talk because now I'm gonna obsess over that.
I love this.
I need to write my crowd surf song.
I love it. I look forward to it. I'll be there with my hands up, ready for you.
Yes. Yes.
Oh, thank you so much, Amanda, for this.
Thank you.
So much fun. And that's a wrap. Thank you so much, Amanda, for your time and your wit and great ideas and just such a generosity of spirit and sharing process and what it's like to be an art maker. It's not easy. We really appreciate it. And please do not hesitate to get in touch with us. You can find us at Tara Cheyenne TCP. That's on the old Instagrams. On Facebook. I know I keep asking this, but does anybody look at Facebook? I don't look at Facebook. Tara Cheyenne Performance is how you can find us there. Website, www.taracheyenne.com. And if you have the means inclination to donate, upper right-hand corner, it says donate. Easy. Or just email. I love email. info@taracheyenne.com. Talking Shit with Tara Cheyenne is a projet of Tara Cheyenne Performance, produced, edited with original music by Mark Stewart. MarkStewartMusic.com. You can get in touch with him there. And please do continue to take care of yourselves, to take care of your bodies and your minds and your spirits, and keep making shit up. And instead of leaving you with a quotation today, because the whole digital world is, smartphones and shit really been on my mind as a person who uses that stuff and as a parent, I just want to drop this in. Are you bored enough? Do you let yourself get bored enough? Do you leave space between the thing that you were doing and the next thing you're going to do, or maybe not looking at your phone as much? I don't know. Is it ruling you, or are you using it as a tool? And I'm saying this to myself as much as everybody else. And I think that what I have noticed lately with our child is we've taken away some of the phone access and digital access, and we come home and they've done major projects, art making, incredible things. So just saying, boredom is a really important tool. Be well. We'll see you next time.
This podcast is effing good.